By the end of this section, I can describe the role of trade in Muslim civilization, identify the traditions that influence Muslim art and architecture, and explain advances Muslims made in centers of learning, key terms, people, places, social mobility, calligraphy, Arabic numerals, Ibn Sina. What business practices were started by merchants in Muslim lands? One of the things to kind of keep in mind is that because Muhammad was a merchant, merchants were placed a little bit higher up in society than maybe some other places. But when we look at the growth of trade and business, they kind of go hand in hand with the growth of the empire. As the empire gets bigger and the Muslim empire controls more places, there's more trade going back and forth. There's also more trade networks as they make more connections. And again, when you have trade, it isn't just about the exchange of products. It's also the spread of technology, knowledge, ideas, culture. And we can even see that with Muhammad himself, that he, on his business ventures, would meet new people, and he sought out Christians and Jews and kind of got some learning experiences from there, and it shaped his understanding of the world. One of the more important things, and there's many that come from, but one of the more important things is the Indian numeral system that came from India to Arabia and from Arabia to Western Europe. So new trading practices, they formed partnerships, and the nice thing about partnerships is, you know, if there's 2 or 3 or 4 of you that are going into a business, you only have to put up 1/4 of the money needed to start the business, which means you only have 1/4 of the risk. On the other hand, you also get only 1/4 of the reward, but it makes it a less risky venture. The other thing you see is the next 3, buying and selling on credit, the formation of banks, and using checks. What that really does is it opens up the economic world, because now you don't have to carry all this money with you. You can exchange one thing from one bank to another. You can write a check from one part of the empire and they'll get cashed in another, and it just makes trade and all that business flow more smoothly. And so because merchants are well respected, and because it plays such a critical role, there's a bit more social mobility in the Islamic Empire than maybe some of the other places that we've talked about. Because in the business world, if you work hard and you get lucky and you do all the right things, you can make quite a bit of money, and that will move you up in the world. So if we look at art and architecture, one of the things is they mention an anecdote, and if you look at Muslim literature, they contain these anecdotes, these short entertaining stories. But a lot of times you may hear it more like anecdotal evidence, and that's using your own experience or observation as evidence. And when you get into writing a paper, or if you get into doing a research project, anecdotal evidence a lot of times is kind of the weakest evidence. So just because you've seen it and you've experienced it doesn't make it that's the way it always goes. So you need to have more research-based evidence, but every once in a while you can use an anecdote or anecdotal evidence to go along with some of your more well-tested research, I guess. So if we look at Muslim art, one thing about Muslim art is they focus more on human and non-religious themes. And again, that goes to Islamic religion, that they see paintings and statues as being idol worship, and so they're really not well accepted. So when you look at Muslim art, they have different themes than what you would have seen in Western art. And for Muslim buildings, they have dome mosques and minarets, and that's kind of their architectural style. But again, their mosques were decorated with calligraphy, this decorative, artistic writing. That is what adorned mosques and religious buildings more so than paintings and artwork. So how did Muslim scholars preserve and build on the learning of earlier civilizations? So if we look at all the major cities, Baghdad, Damascus, these places are hotbeds for universities and learners. And so because you have all of these educated people, or people wanting to get educated, you have all of these fresh new ideas coming in, and you see this blossoming of new learning, and so they're going to add to a lot of what's already there. But also, like we talked about in chapter 9, one of the critical roles that the Islamic Empire plays is it preserves these past Greek and Roman works for future generations in the Hellenistic societies. And so by preserving past works, it's able to get passed on to others. Now if you look at some of the new learning, for math, they go through a ton of stuff. I'm just kind of simplifying this down and keeping it to a few things that maybe you can kind of realize or recognize that impact you today. You've got the Arabic numeral system, which is huge, but also for math, the very formations of algebra begin here, and the Islamic algebra book is one that's going to kind of uh, be the centerpiece of math and algebra for centuries to come. Same with medicine. One of the things with medicine is in the Islamic world you had to pass a test to become a doctor to show that you knew what you were doing and how to mix things and treat things. One of the big things that comes out of this is Ibn Sina, and in the West he's known as Avicenna, and he has a medical book that's going to dominate medicine for the next 500 years. That is the go-to book if you want to know how to treat something, how to fix something, how to cure something. Throughout most of the known world, and at least the Western world, they go to Avicenna's book. And they did some pretty advanced surgeries. They were doing cataract surgeries on eyes, and they were dealing with smallpox and some of those types of things, and playing around with inoculations, and so they're kind of at least compared to Europe, they're really on the cutting edge of things.